All right, another podcast from the Michigan Institute of Athletics in Brighton, Michigan, episode 169. Closing in on my 200th episode, and man, it's been phenomenal to sit and discuss so many different topics with such a wide variety of people, and I'm very excited for this one today. So, without further ado, I want to introduce Lawrence Pumford. Lawrence, this is going to be a great episode for me because we were able to sit and have coffee, and I walked you through the facility. I got to know you a little bit, but I really don't know your story. I don't know what makes you the man that you are. And I mean, you just exude phenomenal energy. You're easy to talk to. You're easy to be around. So I want to start this episode the way that I start most of my episodes. I want to kind of take it all the way back. Where were you born and raised? What were you like as a young man? What were the things that were influential to you? What kind of shaped your worldview? And then maybe as you unveil that story, some light switch moments for you, or moments that were very character building. They put you on a certain path. They changed your perspective of things, and we'll slowly start to unveil your story to the listeners.
Super. So I was born and raised in a small town, Chesaning, on a farm, dairy farm, with an amazing family. My parents were incredible. I never questioned their love for me and their care for me, and they had 12 kids. So I've got 11 siblings. Yes, and so it was, and like I said, it was amazing. It was a dairy farm, so we were always busy, and it was a great place to raise kids because you always had something to do. We learned how to work. There were 6 boys, 6 girls. I always had a football team. My dad was a huge athlete. He was pretty good. Tried out for the Tigers way back when, but about my stature, so he really didn't have the size for it. But we were always playing. My dad would say, "Okay, here's the football." 4 oldest boys. We would go out. Whoever caught the most passes got to pick their job for the day, their chore for the day, things like that. So we're very competitive, and unfortunately, I was the smallest out of the group and the least athletically talented, so I always got the grubby jobs. But no, it was great. But one of the things my parents always said, even though they were, we were on a farm, they didn't have a college education, but they said constantly when we were 3 years old and older, "You're going to go to college. You're going to go to college. You're going to go to college. You pick what you want to study and where you want to go, but you're going to go to college." So that was kind of an indoctrination. 11 living kids, 11 college degrees, whole host of other, higher, masters, doctorates, things of that sort. So not that college is required for a successful life, but for us, for our parents, that was something that was very, very important. And so I attended a small school, Chesaning High School, was on the wrestling team, very shy and introverted, not very confident, didn't speak a lot, didn't say a lot. Went to college, walked on to the wrestling team at Ferris, and I remember there was 842-pounders and super competitive, but I had a college coach that really could get inside of my head and convince me of my potential and that I had capacity, and I certainly had work ethic as a farm boy. So I became successful there. Wasn't All-American or anything like that, but it was very competitive on an international or on a national level, and had a great experience there. Really learned a lot about teamwork. And in fact, I'd say the most valuable class I ever had in college was wrestling, because I just learned so much about life, how to overcome, how to be disciplined. Wrestling at that time was very tied to weight. Had to cut weight and this idea of delayed gratification. You had to work hard to get to where you wanted to be. Was part of the wrestling culture. And so studied education there, became a science teacher, But in the process, I decided that I wanted to go right into graduate school. I applied for some fellowships throughout the country. Was accepted at Brigham Young University out west. Hadn't been out west. Had no idea of this university. Just knew it was out in the mountains and that there was great skiing there. And so I was adventurous. Jumped in my Volkswagen Bug and drove the 24 hours. So I went to graduate school there. Great place, great people. One of the things that was very fascinating, though, was the internship I did while I was there, as I got my master's in educational leadership. I served an internship on the Navajo Indian Reservation. So I spent a year out in the middle of nowhere in the Four Corners area, and just a fascinating experience getting to know the Native Americans there, developing a love for the desert, a love for them, a love for their culture, and stayed around for another year as a teacher. After I graduated, I had a 20-month program, and then I started as a teacher there and taught for a year. From there, I did a 2-year service mission for my church. Ended up in Montreal, learned to speak French. Met a lot of fascinating people. Just opened my born in a cornfield mentality to the metropolis and just a whole array of different people that I met while I was there. Came back to Michigan, couldn't find a job as a teacher, went down to North Carolina, taught for 4 years in a desegregated school there, working in coaching. I was a wrestling coach, coached kids from some really rough parts of the city. Drove them home, got to know them, spent time with their families, lived their existence. Just a fascinating experience. In the process, though, I had become acquainted with a young lady in Montreal and started a long-distance relationship. So we ended up getting married and starting our life in Montreal and living the urban life there. I got a job teaching at a private Jewish school. I knew nothing about the Jewish community at that time, but just fell in love with that community and just had a great time. Did some wrestling coaching there too as well, and but had just a truly great experience, getting to know another culture, just like the Navajos, just like the Deep South, and so really kind of opened my view to life. At a certain point, though, the politics in Quebec were changing, and they were trying to succeed from Canada and the economics of that area. Plus, I had my entire family, save one sibling, that lived in the state of Michigan. Every time there was a family function going on, I wasn't present. So we moved back here, and I was fortunate to get a job at Heartland. I've been here for 23 years. Well, I live in the City of Howell, and but worked and taught and served as administrator principal for 15 years for Heartland schools, and at the elementary, at middle school. I was an assistant at the high school level. Just love this community. I couldn't be happier. Been a lot of different places, but couldn't be happier with the choice that we made to settle in Howell and to work at Heartland. Just a great community, great families, great people. And I feel honored, really honored, to have been able to been an educator and to work to change lives. I always went to work and said, what am I going to do today? I'm going to school to change lives. And it was just an awesome experience. So I'm grateful for the opportunity to have to come and visit with you.
I've loved your story so far, man. You've lived a good life.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see it in your eyes when you talk about it. When I see you reflecting upon your past and the places you've been and those experiences, you can see in your eyes that you're like thankful that you had those moments. You have gratitude for the experiences, and they've probably stretched you as a man. Like the man that grew up in those cornfields would probably be vastly different had you never have traveled and seen the world and seen different sides of life and perspectives. And so let's kind of take your story apart a little bit. So would you say you had like a really good childhood? Do you enjoy the way that you were raised and you think it was a foundation for success? Because I feel like I've interviewed other people that came from the farm lifestyle, the big family lifestyle, and they have like an unwavering confidence in their ability to like go into the unknown. And like you said, I didn't know what was out west. I didn't really even know what I was getting into. But the confidence that you had as a young man allowed you to go into that endeavor. And a lot of people, based on how they're raised or their environments, they may not have that same confidence to just say, I'm going to step into the unknown and it's going to work out in my favor. If you are proud of who you are, if you have work ethic, if you have character, you're able to step up to the plate a little bit more in life. You're able to step up to challenges. So it sounds like you had a massive family. Religion was probably a big part of the family home. That sounds like the old Catholic family or the old...
You got it. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. The Catholic priest was over at our house on Sunday afternoon for dinner and stuff like that. Yeah.
But was it an amazing childhood being surrounded by siblings and people that, you share the same blood and your family and you despite your differences and disputes and all the difficulties that probably come with that, would you say you're very thankful for the childhood that you had?
Oh, and tremendously. I worship the ground my parents walk on because they, were they perfect? No. Did they do everything the way I raised my kids? No. But did I know I was loved? Absolutely. And I believe that if you know that, if a child knows that, nobody's perfect as a parent, but my parents they had incredible capacity to love, and that's amazing. They had a daughter, little sister. She passed at 15 months. She was a blue baby. She was born with a bad valve in her heart, and you would think, okay, 12 kids. How can you love each one individually that intensely? But I remember I was a young teen, I think I was like 13 years old when Lenny passed, and I saw what my parents went through losing a child, and it was a tremendous refining experience for them and for our family as a group, and I think it changed us. No, I have no regrets. One thing that was difficult was that because we were a large family, farm family, we didn't often have a lot. And so we were kind of on that struggling poverty type of family, Salvation Army wasn't unfamiliar to us, and seconds of this and that, hand-me-downs and things of that sort. In a community where most people were not like that. I mean, that was a bit of a challenge, but I think that built character, I remember going to college and for having a job, summer job where I made some money and that I could buy the same clothes that everybody else wore. And I went to college and it was like, okay, I'm not the poor farm family down the road. I'm just like everyone else. And I really came out of my shell at that point because I just felt like nobody knows. Nobody knows my past. Nobody knows. Not that my past was bad. I was proud of my past. And I was proud of my family. But it was also difficult to experience poverty. And I don't know how to teach kids that in this day and age. My kids didn't grow up with the same experience, right? And I don't want them to. But how do you teach that appreciation for just life and just kind of some normal things that, when you have enough to eat, when you have, clothes that don't stand out and that kind of stuff, But I wouldn't trade it. It was awesome.
That's such a good point. I mean, how do you really recreate the things that made you into the man that you are? You can't. Yeah. Like my fiance's son will not grow up in an environment that's like that. He is. So I almost can't fault him for not having certain characteristics yet because he hasn't been stretched by life in that way yet. Yeah. It doesn't mean that he won't be down the road. You know what I mean? Because in every way that you're not stretched, at some point life is probably going to pull you in that direction and say, guess what? You are not prepared for what this feels like.
Yes.
You're not prepared to feel living on your own for the first time and seeing the measly amount of money that's coming in and looking at the responsibilities you have and what you have to take care of and going, how does this work? So life will stretch you at some point. But
Yes.
when I was listening to your story, I have a very visual mind, and I was imagining, despite the struggles, that's a beautiful life, man. And your family, your parents probably sacrificed a tremendous amount to have a family like that, and culturally we've shifted a little bit. You don't see as many of those. You don't see the mission of men and women as much nowadays to say, like, we're going to come together, we're going to create a beautiful union, we're going to go to bat for one another, we're going to respect our marriage vows, we're going to do this, and we're going to create a beautiful family, and we're going to pass on blessings and all of these things to our children. You see a shift in that. I read a statistic somewhere about like the amount of people that don't even plan to have children, and it's astronomical.
Yes. Yeah, that's and it's kind of the shift towards individual rights versus duty and commitment and sacrifice. But with that commitment to duty and sacrifice comes tremendous experiences. I'm going to go visit my mother as soon as this podcast is over, and she's 83 years old, and she's doing great. My father's passed a few years ago. The treasure that she has as she goes out and visits with her grandkids, or goes and watches them play golf or do whatever, she's it's amazing the blessings that she has in her lives and the good things that she has in her lives. And
I'm not sure if anything could take that place. I don't know if anything could actually affect your mom to the core the way that it does when she looks at her children and her grandchildren. Yeah. And like, you would think to some degree, especially at her age, she's kind of the top of the pyramid, and so many people exist and are living beautiful lives and these experiences because of the sacrifices she made.
Exactly.
And when you flip the coin and like, you're a parent now, you had your own children now.
Yeah.
Did you experience those same rewards that your mother experienced to some degree? Like, was raising children one of the most profound and powerful moments of your life and your wife's life, would you say? When you, instead of being the kid, now all of a sudden you're the parent. Was it as impactful to you?
Oh, definitely. You really don't experience love until you have a child, in my opinion. I mean, I love my wife, and that's a special category, right? But a child, when you have a child and you care for that child, you sacrifice for that child, you give for that child. I mean, that's what love's all about, right? And so when you do that, that actually deepens that love. And so, yes, it's amazing. Now, I only have 3 kids. I didn't have 12 kids, but we don't have a farm situated for that. I wanted to have 6 kids, but you know what? You work with this. It wouldn't have been good for my wife's health to do that. And so, no.
It's just great that you can see it from the other side. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You got to see it.
Right. But I'll just tell you how the concentric circles of influence work. There's 11 siblings still alive, right? 11 marriages, 0 divorces, 35 grandkids. All of those kids are functioning members of society. They're great. You could have them here on your show, talk to them. They contribute to society. We've been amazingly blessed from our parents and what they did for us, the sacrifice they made for us. So I think we as siblings, we all have the same mindset, that we are going to have families and we're going to honor commitment to our spouses, commitment to our kids, and be there for them.
And I think things like this are really important for a healthy society, for a nation that's going to stand together and live beautiful lives and, make the most of this world. Because for as much as you can make things beautiful, you can make things, terrible. You can ruin the world around you with each step you take. You can cause pain and chaos and despair in countless people's lives. It's a conscious choice each day to be like, I want to be. You said the phrase over and over, like they're contributing members of society. That is a choice. And it's a choice that has to be made every day. And it comes from like a sense of purpose or attaching to ideologies like I matter. it is the right thing to do. There is a path that I should walk. I should try to make things better for the people that come after me. I should try to have a net positive impact on the people around me. And one thing that I've kind of witnessed in society before we start going into different tangents is kind of a little bit of the destruction of the nuclear family, the destruction of the ideas that like having a tight-knit family and contributing to community and trying to make the world a little bit brighter and more beautiful is a paramount reason for your existence. It's almost kind of being pushed to like do whatever makes you happy and whatever you feel like doing. But that should come with an asterisk to say, if it's not harming the world around you, if your selfishness and your own whatever hedonistic desires aren't causing destruction, if you don't put that asterisk, the world will tend to go down lower and lower and lower. And what does that do? Damages the next generation of children, creates more unstable homes, creates more chaos that then permeates schools and communities, then workforces, and you end up with a more damaged populace, more people that are not enjoying this human experience the way that maybe you and I are. And we have to get back to the fundamentals. It is the fundamentals of things, having a purpose, believing in right from wrong, wanting to do things to make a better world for your child, sacrifice for people that you love. These things make life beautiful. So I want to, and you can feel free to comment on that, but I really want to dig into, okay, so farm boy with siblings, you have one perspective of the world. You've only had one real filter to have your information come through and one experience that you've lived. Now all of a sudden you go and you see inner city poverty. You see struggle on a different level. You see the Navajo style of lifestyle. You see these different cultural and environmental locations on the map, ideologies, all of these other things. How does that start to shape you as a man? And did you ever get to the point where you were questioning, like, man, is the way that I view things correct? Should I have to modify to this viewpoint? You were also a part of a religion, so you kind of have a blueprint for how to think, behave, act, speak, etc. And it sounded like you were working for ministry and you were working for a ministry. Just kind of walk me through those chapters. What did you learn from living in those different places, those different cultures, those different people? Did it shape you? Were you able to make an impact positively on them, etc.?
So I recall when I was in high school, we had these exchange students who came in to our school, and they went to school for a year, and they're from South America. And we had a panel discussion in a government class where the two exchange students sat up front, and they talked about their existence growing up in South America, in Colombia. And we were able to ask questions. And I remember asking the question to them, and he says, tell us how Colombians think about Americans. And my worldview at that time was, tell us how great we are. Tell us how amazing we are. Tell us how we saved the world and all that kind of stuff. And I remember one of them looking at the other and said, and looking back, he looked at the person next to him and he says, do you really want to know? I said, yeah, tell us how great we are. And he says, nobody likes you. And he said, they don't like Americans. They think you're arrogant. They think you're conceited and that you get in everybody's business and all that kind of stuff. And I just remember being blown away to think, how could that be? We're the greatest nation on the planet. We go around, do all this good, all that kind of stuff. And so, but I remember that experience well, and then going to the Navajo Indian Reservation, spending time there, and seeing, how the Bureau of Indian Affairs, a federal program to educate Indians, had not been productive for these folks, and that we had kind of rounded them all up, Kit Carson did, and put them all in this reservation. They're farmers. They're in this, godforsaken desert, where they couldn't really farm successfully. And so, I started to kind of say, okay, hey, look, maybe everything we do is not perfect and right. Go to, North Carolina, Charlotte. I spent time at Stomptown, which is a rough part of town, and see what the kids go through there. remember driving him back and forth, I remember this, I'm with this 17-year-old African-American boy who's on my wrestling team, good kid, hard worker, trying to nose to the grindstone and just trying to get it done, doing his schoolwork, all that kind of stuff. And we pull up and he says, "Hey, coach, do you want to come in and see my son?" 17 years old. He said, "You want to come in and see my son?" He was held back, so he was a junior in high school. And I said, "Pop, sure. Let me go." So I go to the front door of this cardboard-looking house, and his grandmother comes out, bless her heart, and hands me this baby. And I remember thinking, what chance does this child have of making it? Where I grew up in a home where I had all kinds of opportunity, had all kinds of things working for me. Not that this child couldn't make it and couldn't succeed, but moments like that just changed me. I went from, well, if you just get a job, and if you just, do the right thing, everybody can make it, right? It's tougher. I saw it on generational poverty and, on the Indian reservation. I saw that situation. Then I moved to Montreal, and I'm at a Cranbrook-type school, exclusive private Jewish school, teaching kids. One of the things I found, James, is that kids are kids. Whether they're some wealthy kids from Montreal living in a very close-knit community and family, or kids from the South or the reservation or from the cornfield, kids are kids. And so I appreciate that opportunity. I'll tell you that, I went to Canada, which is a socialistic society. I went there as a Reagan Republican. And, and I don't feel like I fit really in any party at this point. I'd say I'm an American. If somebody asked me, "Are you Republican or Democrat?" I'm an American, But it, after being there for a few months of complaining and kind of whining about, well, I don't like the way they do it here, and I don't like the way they do it here, I came back where I started to adjust and say, well, maybe that's not such a bad idea. And maybe that works too. And maybe America is not the repository of every brilliant and great idea on the planet. And so I just developed a healthy respect for other opinions and ideas and ways of doing things, and the ability to kind of listen and learn. And I think that served me well. I believe that made me capable of being a successful school administrator here in Heartland. And because I think as a principal, you have to be able to listen and learn and see different points of view and try to find some middle ground, find some areas where we can collaborate together, say, with a child that thinks a certain way, or a parent that thinks a certain way, a teacher thinks another way, having the ability to be able to see different points of view and say, let's come together and find some common ground. Those experiences help me to develop that capacity.
That makes sense. I mean, and it would improve your empathy. It would improve your compassion. It would improve your emotional intelligence and your ability to deal with such a wide range of people. It was probably paramount to you being a good principal. I mean, those things were probably massive for you. With that being said, if having the life experience that you have, how old are you today, Lawrence, if you don't mind saying?
63.
You're 63 years of age, and you've traveled all over the world. You've seen, I love that you said kids are kids, because that gives such a bright hope for the future, no matter what. No matter how damaged society has become, no matter how broken families are, saying kids are kids means that, like, if we could get people on the right track, kids can grow up into healthy, functioning adults. They can come from misery and create beauty. And a lot of times, the people that I've seen in my life that come through extremely difficult circumstances, they don't want to go back there, and they don't want to see other people there, because they understand what that road is like, and where it leads to, and the type of chaos and violence and stuff that exists in that realm. So they almost want to do everything in their power not to end up like that. And sometimes you see people that have breezed through, they were naturally gifted at a lot of things, they were popular in school, they become like horrible alcoholics and their life falls to shambles because they didn't have the character traits necessary to get through what is sure to be a rocky ride. Like, life is not easy for anyone, I don't care who you are. Because if you've not been stretched, life will stretch you.
Yes.
Period.
Most certainly.
Period. So with that being said, do you think there's any one thing from your perspective that needs to be at the forefront of what we do as society to try to give those kids a fighting chance across a wide spectrum of people? We can't control the poverty rate at which someone will be born into. Like, you can't control what social status you're going to be born into. You can't control all these other factors, and it's not fair. You don't get dealt the same hand of cards as someone else, but that doesn't mean you can't play them to the best of your ability. Do you think there's one thing that as long as that permeates a city, a culture, an area, a demographic, whatever it is, that allows it to still work, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Is there something that you see that as long as we keep this at the forefront, we can bring people together and still create a beautiful world despite the difficulties? Is there any one thing that you'd point out, or a multitude of things you say, I think it is important that we need to make sure that we do X, Y, and Z?
Well, you talked about the family and the great importance to our society of having strong, functional families. And I said categorically every year when I'd stand and address my parents, I'd say, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for doing what you do. And I said, Heartland Middle School or Creekside Elementary or Heartland High School, wherever it was, is a representation of the strength of the families. And because we have some awesome families, we have an awesome school. But I believe you can have an awesome school, an awesome situation, if you have people that care about each other, and they look out for each other, and you create a culture where that is the expectation. And so my whole focus, especially when I was at Heartland Middle School, was just to teach kids that it was important to look out for the person next to you, to care about them, to know about them, to seek to understand them, to accept them. And when we have a culture like that, bullying becomes a non-issue. Mean behavior, the terrible stuff that went on social media, all of that became, it gets minimized significantly if kids are thinking about somebody else other than themselves. And so that would be the one thing.
I love that you said that, because I have my own opinions, but I don't want to say my opinions. I want to see what you bring to the table. And that's what I think it is, man. I think we need to restore the strength in families first so that you can give a lot of these kids a fighting chance. I think you need a basic outline of right versus wrong, good versus evil, whether it comes from a religion. For some families, it can come from like, hey, this is why we believe in this structure. Like, I didn't grow up in a religious household at all, and I don't consider myself particularly religious, although almost all of the most powerful people, and I say powerful not in the way of like social status or anything, but like the people that just really can make an impact on the people around them in my life, they're very religious people. There has to be some type of thing guiding your consciousness, because otherwise, like you said, selfish behavior, not sacrificing for others. Well, this is what I want. Why can't I do it? There's actually nothing probably stopping you other than the consequences that are on the other side of your actions. We need to restore families, but we also need to get people to align to like, do we want to do things the right way? As soon as we say that, we have to start defining what a right way is. And someone's right way might be different than yours, but you almost have to agree to come to the table and have dialogue and discuss those things and work to create a more perfect union. Like the idea that was written down and all those years ago in the Constitution, we're trying to create a more perfect union. And that is difficult because we don't all see the world the same way. We don't all come from the same circumstances. That doesn't mean, though, that you can't put your foot down from time to time and say, no matter what, if you believe that, beating other people to get what you want is is the proper route, we're not going to subscribe to that belief. We're not going to subscribe to physical violence to these people to accomplish this task. And somewhere along the line, the only reason I'm even bringing that up is some people have gotten so soft to the degree of, well, anyone's allowed to have their own opinion, and it is of the same merit and value as anyone else's. And society just can't work like that. We have to agree in a basic social contract to like, okay, these things are generally more on the right side, these are more on the wrong, and we have to care about how we impact the people around us. And I love that you keep saying that. Like, if you could get kids to look out from the lens of it's not just me, it's me and everybody around me. How do we make this a little bit better? The world could almost be fixed in very little moments. Like, one person doesn't change the world, but you do change the world. The impact you make on the environments you take part in and on every interaction you have is either made slightly better, slightly worse, or neutral. You know what I mean? In the grand scheme of things. So you got to want to aim at something. And like when we sat down and had coffee, I said, that's like the ideology that permeates this building is like, you have to aim up. We have to first define what up is. We have to define what right is. We have to define on what is good for the community. So anything like you'd like to say in response to that? And then I'd love to turn it to our city. I'd love to discuss like Howell and Brighton and let's say Livingston County in general. We have a magical spot on the map. Anyone that's listening, like if you're a part of this community and you don't see the value that's here, you need to just go talk to people more. Go and share your life with people more. You need to go into new communities within the community and see the beauty that we have right here. And I've been all over too, like you. I've seen some horrific places in China. I've seen some horrific places in Brazil. I've seen spots on the map where I go like, this is subhuman living conditions. Like you would never believe it existed until you physically see it with your eyes. When I come back home here, I go, we live in a sanctuary from so much of the hell that life can be, and that's worth fighting for. And like, unfortunately, you can't fix all of the chaos around the world, and you're wasting your energy and effort that would be better applied towards your family or yourself or the man in the mirror or your community, that you need to start there. But we're not going to start there if we don't look at the place that we live as highly valuable and worth protecting. So let's kind of discuss Howell. Let's discuss how you've seen it change over the years. A lot of people still try to bash this area and say at one point in time there was a KKK leader that lived in Howell. I still hear that from time to time. Howell is inherently racist and terrible because of, it's like, guys, we need, I'm not saying rewrite history. I'm not saying not acknowledge those things. I'm saying here and now, we need to have love and respect for what we have and then figure out how do we make it better. What have you seen in Howell? You've made it your home. How long have you been here? How has it changed? And what do you think are the things that we need to fight to protect moving forward?
Yeah, so I've been here for 23 years, and I agree with you 100% that it's not nirvana, but pretty darn close to it. It's a great place, and I'm so glad I chose to raise my kids here. I had the opportunity to raise my kids here. And so one of the things that I've always appreciated about the United States is the religious fabric of our nation. Lived in Canada, not the same thing that's there. A lot of great people, but religion doesn't permeate throughout. And so you talk about the moral undergirdings of conduct, right? What guides us to what's true and good and right. And, the golden rule, do to your neighbor as you want to be done to you. I mean, that's universal across all religions. I had a great experience in Montreal for my 2 years there. I did some door knocking, talk to people and say, hey, we've got a message about Jesus Christ. Would that interest you? No, we're Baha'i. No, we're Muslim. No, we're Sikh. We're something else. And I would just say, that's interesting. I'm from this little town in Chesaning, Michigan, with cornfields all around me. I have no idea what that is. Would you take 5 minutes and tell me about your religious experience? And so I get this world religion experience when I was in Montreal just by talking to people. And And it was just so cool.
Really quick, did the underlying messages stay the same when you heard all these different religions? Like, are they all aiming at the same things? They just see different labels to put on it?
Yes. That's the basic principles of all religions is the golden rule, right? And to to serve God, do right, and do good to your neighbor, and things of that sort. So I really appreciate that the fact that the United States leans that way. I mean, the original founders of the country, they had a very strong religious core and approach. Even Jefferson, who wasn't really, committed to one religion or another. I mean, you look at his writings, he was very committed to a religious basis and religious freedom. But I worry about the disintegration of that. If you look at the numbers across the country, less and less people go to church. Now, you say, well, is that such a big deal? You may or may not go to church, but you have to have some kind of moral guide, whether you're doing that or not. And church in the past has been the mechanism to deliver that. And so we have less of that. So how do we continue to teach good moral behavior, which is really about serving others more so than serving yourself? I mean, there's balance in all things, right? There's individual rights, but there's a collective responsibility. And if you see less and less people having families, right? Just as you mentioned. And so I think that it's really important to be mindful and thoughtful about others around you, about your society. So to bring it back to Howell, when my wife a few months ago heard about marijuana shops wanting to be introduced into the city of Howell, she said, that doesn't sound right for me, and it's not something I want my kids exposed to. The state law passed, and when the voters approved the legalization of marijuana in 2018, and they created state law, it allowed every community the automatic opt-out to retail establishments. Okay, so marijuana dispensaries couldn't be in the community unless the community opted in. And they could do so by two ways. One, the vote of their council, either township or city council, or by the vote of the people. And the vote of the people would come after, a number of signatures have been signed and a bunch of people have said, we want this on the ballot. And so that has happened in the city of Howell. And we, as a group that we've formed, it's called Protect Howell Youth and Community, feel like it's not a good thing for us to have marijuana dispensaries in our community because, for two reasons. Number one, if you're doing medical marijuana, awesome, great. If it's helping you because you've got cancer and you've got pain and this is a medical treatment, wonderful. Recreationally, we voted, the people have spoken, you want to use recreational marijuana, that's up to you. 21 and up is what the law says. If you're underage, the evidence clearly shows, the research clearly shows that it's not good for developing brains. And there's all kinds of bad consequences of doing marijuana, especially the intense marijuana, which is 20 times more powerful than it was in the 1970s, THC levels. It's just really bad for kids in so many ways. We can talk about that, but so if we put a dispensary in downtown Howell, what that tells kids as they walk by it subliminally or directly, they're saying, hey, marijuana dispensary. They start to normalize it. They start to think it's okay. Exposure, the advertising goes with it. We don't see that as good, and we'd like to prevent that.
No, I agree with you 1,000%. 1,000%. And that's as a person who, I have friends that recreationally use marijuana. I have people that love it to unwind. They use that to relax, and that's the way that they calm their mind, and they do it after work. And I am completely for your right to do that. But your right to smoke marijuana or drink alcohol or go to a strip club. You have the right to do those things. That doesn't mean that we should push it on society or our children especially. We have a responsibility to the people that are around us to really try to steer things in the best way possible. And pushing, like you said, businesses to be able to take advantage of your programmable children, and your kids are going to have a lot to contend with. Society in general, if you're a human being in this world, you have a lot to contend with. You have countless things that are going to come up in your life that are going to try to distract you from being the person you could become. They're going to try to strip you of financial resource. They're going to try to paralyze you because instead of working on yourself on the weekend or mapping out what you want to do or getting your family in line or all these things, if you're going to the bar every weekend, you're not making those progresses. I'm sorry. Life is very difficult. And as good people, this is what you witness out of people. When people really get their life together well and they're very happy, they want to see others happy. And it's almost like you realize you owe a debt to the universe or society, or you feel fortunate and you want to see other people experience that success too. The moment I found out about this, I felt the exact same way as you. And I'm not from a religious basis of why I'm against it. I've personally used marijuana in the past. I think I've probably 10 or less times in my life. It's just not really for me. I enjoy my life thoroughly all the time. So I don't need any drug or, marijuana or alcohol. I love being around my friends. I love being around people I care about. I love pursuing, things that matter to me. I love seeing other people successful and happy. I want to see other people walk that road. So when I had heard that all it is a business machine that says we can extract a lot of funds from this community if we can pass this law, I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in what serves people the best. I train countless children out here. Tons of kids in jiu-jitsu, mixed martial arts, self-defense. These kids are growing up in a world that's very different from your world and very different from my world. They are looking at Instagram and trying to figure out, am I not successful if I don't have X, Y, and Z? And the more broken people are and the more discouraged they are and the more, kind of worn down they are from life, the more they're likely to just fall into things that help them escape that reality. Mm-hmm. Why struggle against all the resistance of life to finally break through and find fulfillment and be happy if you can just drown those feelings away at the bar? Or if you could just smoke weed and take some of that chaos away? I don't think we should push that for people. I'm not against marijuana. If it helps you, do that. But ask yourself, does it actually help you? Do you have a successful family? Are you fulfilled? Could you not smoke and still be feeling great about your life? If so, then you are one of the exceptions. But that doesn't mean that you can't reflect and say, despite it being a net positive overall for me, I don't want my kids to be involved in this yet. I want them to figure life out. I want them to, get a good spot, get a good job, get a good career, get their family going. And then if they choose to smoke too, hey, more power to you. You're more than welcome. So I really want to push the idea that I'm not against marijuana. I'm against what it does to our town and the direction that we push people. Just alcohol and countless other things. You have the right to do it, and you're not a bad person for using it. I don't view you as any lesser. The label of whether or not you smoke weed is so far down the list. It's are you a good person? Do you have integrity? Do you care about others? Do this? Do that? And somewhere at the very, very bottom of those labels is do you use marijuana or not? It doesn't matter to me. But when you bring this debate up to a lot of people, I feel like they almost feel attacked and it's my right to do this and I'm allowed to, so I'm going to be in support of it. This is not a challenge of that by any stretch of the imagination. This is just if you could create a great society for your son or daughter or your family to grow up in that helps people put their lives in order so that they can live good lives, so that they can have freedom of choice. What does that society look like? And in my opinion, it doesn't involve downtown Howell being overwhelmed by dispensaries. Because it's not going to be one, Lawrence. Right. It's going to be the moment it passes, as many businesses that can get downtown real estate, that believe they can extract funds from the city and people, they're going to go in there. You can't allow two and then stop the third. They'll just sue the city. And the city is not going to be able to fight that.
Yes, that's exactly right. Because the way the this proposal we're voting on is actually a charter amendment to the charter of the city. And the way it's written, as I sat and visited with our city attorney, I said, look, I'm reading this. There's a selection process because it's for 2 dispensaries. And there's a scoring system, and that scoring system is so rigged to the people that submitted all the signatures. They hired a company out of Saginaw. They're out-of-town folks. They're not Heartland or Howell folks. They hire a bunch of people to come in and get signatures. They get the signatures. They put it forward. But they've got the charter written in such a way, the charter amendment written in such a way that they're the companies that are going to be selected. And so Company B comes in and said, hey, we want one of those 2 spots. And I said, well, no, you can't because here's the scoring system. And they're going to say, that's unfair. We're going to sue you. And they did this in Mount Pleasant. They did this in Menominee. They did this in Ypsilanti. Ypsilanti had a lid of 10 dispensaries, and they still got sued. And they opened it up because they couldn't afford to fight. Mount Pleasant had a lid of 2. They have 12 because they got sued, and they said, we can't afford all these lawsuits. We're just going to take this limit off, and now they have 12. So, yeah, so you're very correct in saying it's not 2. We say 2 means 10. We've got a Facebook page, and I send things out, and there's people, lots of different people have different feelings about it. One guy says, look, I can't get up in the morning without my marijuana, so that's what gets me out of bed and gets me to work. Fine. If that works for you, and then I have people that talk about, well, it's medical and I just desperate on this. I said, great. There are over 50 dispensaries within a 30-minute radius. There's mail order, there's delivery. And they say, well, I don't want to drive to Whitmore Lake. I don't want to drive to Weberville. And I said, I think it's worth the convenience of not putting a sign, a billboard up in Howell to say to our kids subtly, program, you talked about programming of kids, to add to the programming that marijuana is okay, because it's not okay for adolescents. It's okay for adults, but for adolescents, let me just go through some of the adverse effects of it. There was a study in New Zealand that said that when they studied adolescents that use it significantly, that's, in other words, they're addicts, 1 out of 4 students or adolescents that use marijuana are going to become an addict, first off. And so out of that 1 out of 4, the adverse life outcomes increase for all of them. Number one, their education attainment is going to be lower. Their income is going to be lower. Their reliance on unemployment and welfare is going to be higher. But here's the kicker. Their life satisfaction is going to be lower, and their relationship satisfaction is going to be lower. They're going to be less happy. That's statistically. Now, you might, the listeners might say, hey, look, I know of so-and-so, and I know of so-and-so.
None of
very
that
successful.
matters. Exceptions to the rule do not define the overall reality. When you're listing those things out, I don't think a study had to be done. To me, that's like, duh. I understand that. Listen, in life, when you struggle for things that matter, that are difficult, on the other side of that struggle is fulfillment, is endorphins, is dopamine, is oxytocin, is the feelings that will drive you forward to doing more good things. When you remove the struggle, and instead of me having to map out my financial situation that's really difficult, or try to fix my family, or try to take on all this personal responsibility, if I can sit down and light up a substance that allows me to feel euphoric to some degree and give me those good feelings, why am I going to go and struggle against the chaos of the world? I'll just sit around and smoke. And some people are able to be highly functioning. There are people that may smoke, they get up, and then they're super successful contributing members to society. I'm not saying that that's not the case. But what I'm saying is exceptions don't make the rule. And overall, I guarantee if you ran that study over and over and over on different demographics and populace of people, you would find those same results. So that's where we have to go back to asking people. If you believe you're a part of a social contract, if you believe that you should do right for the people around you, if you believe you should work to make the world a little better than it currently is your slight inconvenience of having to wait on a delivery get delivered more than what you need so that you always have a backup? Does your convenience supersede the idea that we should not program children to think that, hey guys, as soon as you're adults, you'll be able to stroll right to downtown Howell, buy the weed that you need, and that'll be a pivotal part of your life? We don't want to push that message, period. And it's not, I want to reiterate this, it's not that I'm against any of those people in any way. I've got phenomenal friends of mine that smoke weed all the time. But even those people, I've asked them because I knew we were going to do this podcast and I figured this was going to come up. Every one of my friends that does use marijuana, I said, but let's look at, should we put it downtown? All of them said no. Now, at first, there might have been like, yeah, but James, like, it's not that bad. It is medicinal a lot more. It's government propaganda for the reason it's illegal. But as soon as we worked through the basic objections and I went to, but should we be pushing it on society and children that like, hey, this is a great route to take? All of them said no. And that's the idea. It's like, guys, don't get emotional over the wrong thing. Look at society in a more simple state. Do you want to provide a good downtown community? We have a sanctuary. We have a beautiful place. Just not here. That's it. Just not here. I'm going to tell a story I've actually never told before on this podcast, and only maybe 3 or 4 people in my entire life know this story. And actually, you're going to know the person that knows it because Ken was involved in this process, and I've never told this story. So for the people that don't know, Ken was a gentleman that I had worked with to try to not have Brighton get approved for the dispensaries, and we were able to get that shut down. And thank God. I love downtown Main Street. Brighton's beautiful. You don't have, again, out-of-town people. This is not our community trying to set something up. This is out-of-town people that are trying to siphon as much money as they can from us. We shut it down. Thank God. Brighton's beautiful. Main Street's amazing. We're all very blessed. I was driving back from Brighton to my home one day, and I was going onto the underpass right by where you merge onto 96. You know where, like, the movie theater is and, et cetera. And I looked over to the right side, and there was graffiti underneath the bridge. It said like MASH or something. It was like a tag, right? And this was several months ago, maybe 6 months to 8 months ago. And I was so discouraged. And I go, man, this not here. Like, I know it's just under a bridge. It wasn't that major. It was just 4 letters on a few of the pillars. But it was bothering me every time I drove by. Every time I drove by, I would see it and go, that is the start of the degradation of society. And I know, like, I'm an extremist. I take things to such high levels. But I go, the moment we allow that, why not some more over here? Why not some trash over here? Why not this? So I reached out to Ken and I said, listen, I want to go paint that. I don't want to tell anyone it's going to be me. I want to get me and my Master Perez. We're going to go over there either really late at night or early in the morning. I just don't want to get in trouble. I don't want, somebody to show up and police go, what are you doing? I want to find out the paint color and I want to go fix that. Now, I'm a business owner in the community. I am insanely busy. I travel all the time. I manage countless athletes. I have professional fighters that depend on me. I don't have a lot of free time. But I went, I'm getting that fixed, period. So I called Ken and he goes, you know what, James, let me find out who owns that bridge. I think it's a MDOT. I'll find out and let me get their approval for you. So then we went through the channels and we got a hold of the gentleman that was in charge of it. And he actually said, you know what? I'm going to get that taken care of for you guys. I'm going to get that fixed. So, and I'm like, no, I don't, I'll do it for free. I'll pay for the paint. It's no problem. He sent a crew and he got that repainted over. And it felt so good to me the first time I drove by that bridge and I didn't see that graffiti anymore. And I went, that's my love for Brighton. That's my love for the city. Because how many people drove by that bridge every single day, that overpass, saw the graffiti in the town. They know inherently that it's not good. And no one did anything about it. And maybe it's just because what can I do about it? Well, you could paint it. You could find out who owns it and do something. If we would all take that type of perspective, Lawrence, and say, I care about where I live because it is so much more important than just a visual look. When you were walking through Iron Horse, you got into a conversation about when you were in schools, how crucial it was to you to make it beautiful visually because it changes culture. When you make something beautiful, elegant, clean, professional, high caliber, people are inspired by those things and it pulls them up. When you put people in the face of beauty and high standards, although beauty can shame people. If you're living in a beautiful home and someone lives in a broken home, it can make them feel very negative emotions. When it is done correctly, it inspires people. It pulls them to be more than what they are. It challenges you to try to rise to that level. And that's what this is about. This has nothing to do with people's rights. That has nothing to do with whether you should be allowed to or not. It's nothing that. It is, should we work to create a culture that inspires people to seek all that is the best within themselves and within their surroundings and bring as much of that to life as possible. And if we view the world through that lens and we work to do that as a society, we are going to have more beautiful families, more beautiful communities, more beautiful futures. And guess what? The more people that you take from a broken state and you create happy, fulfilled people with purpose, the more of a positive impact we're going to have in the world. Because those people aren't all going to settle in Livingston County. They're going to branch out and they're going to settle into other communities. And if they are the ones that drive under an underpass at one point and they see a little piece of graffiti and they go, I'm going to do something about that, the world gets a little better. So anyone that drives under that underpass in 96, you probably would have never guessed. James Gray, the owner of Scorpion Fighting System, one day drove by and said, enough is enough, not here in Brighton. We're going to change that. And I would almost challenge anyone that lives in this community, anywhere in this area, in any community. I value you if you make it a point to live like that because you are making more of an impact than you think. That one little bit of graffiti turns into more, turns into more, turns into more. That's why I'm against the dispensaries downtown.
Yeah, and I will, I'll second that in a major way. It's just, even if it only makes a difference on one or two or three young people who, you know, if they're walking downtown and heading to Dairy Queen and they don't see the dispensary, they don't get programmed in their head that, hey, this is okay. I mean, when I was a kid, I grew up with Marlboro Man and Joe Camel and all that kind of stuff, you know. That was programming, and I wanted to smoke cigarettes. I wanted to smoke because that it was just, it was cool. There was something inside my brain that had been programmed. And you know, when I see the billboards down the expressway, you know, some of them are pretty cool. Kids are going to be noticing them. Are we going to see that as we roll into Howell, as we roll into Livingston County, because we've got these dispensaries? Are we going to program those kids? So you said something very profound, and it was duh. Because I've done the research, but I don't need the research to know exactly. I mean, I can point you to a study in Oregon where they, you know, surveyed 68% of all the 7th and all the 8th and 11th grade kids in the state, and they said that, you know, kids that live near a dispensary are twice as likely to use and twice as likely to think that marijuana is not bad for them. And so now, it is bad for adolescents. We've said all along it's not bad for, well, it's debatable on whether it's good or bad for adults. There's medical reasons, uses for it, but for kids, it's clearly bad news. And if we send a message that it's okay, it's not good. As a middle school principal, I saw the kids 12 and 13 years old that were using. Their trajectory was not good. And if we can save just a few of those kids, then it's worth the inconvenience of picking up the phone to call, to order your marijuana rather than go downtown and pick it up, you know.
100%. Lawrence, we're on the exact same page, and I truly believe if I brought almost anyone in this studio, you could be the biggest proponent of marijuana and the biggest proponent of, no, we're bringing the dispensaries downtown. I genuinely believe if we could get past all the nonsense and we could just settle on the idea, is this good for the kids? Is this good for the future? they would say no. That doesn't mean that their own selfish needs might not say, but I want it there. That's fine, man. I've got some selfish tendencies. But what I'm saying is, this is almost a request to say, care about your city, care about your people, and let's just do what's right. Because you want your child to live a beautiful world. And you should, by proxy, want your community to be better. Because then your life will be better. It's like that old adage, like, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. The people you surround yourself with, the ideologies you put in your brain, and the environments that you partake in deeply shape you. So we need to aim at things and say, what's for the best? Even if it's not for my best, what is for the best? And when we do that, we create beautiful things as people. And in my opinion, it was shut down in Brighton, and the weed titans were furious, and now they're trying to get Howell, and it's going to get shut down in Howell. And we're going to say, unfortunately, this is a little bit of a sanctuary. You can siphon profit from all your other places, and the towns will have to see the destruction that it causes. We're going to learn from our lessons without having to go through it. We're not going to have to backpedal and condemn all these buildings and encourage people to just not walk into the shops and ignore. We're going to learn our lessons beforehand. And you see those companies go out of their way to do anything possible for attention. My last example is the vape shop in downtown Brighton. What color is it? It is the most neon pink, loud, lights outside, things flashing in the window, vapes. Why? They need to capture the mind and attention of your children to drive them into being customers. Who is going to care about your child more, you or the vape shop owners? So the more we can stop these type of temptations while a kid has a young developing brain, the better society we are creating. You know, like my son, when he gets older, if he wants to go to a strip club, he can do that. I'm not going to push him to do it. And I'm not going to put a sign in his bedroom to say, hey, don't forget, you can go down here if you need to. I'm going to look out for him to the fullest of my capability for as long as I can. And then as an adult, he can make his own choices. And you know what? If he finds happiness and fulfillment and becomes a good man, I bet you he's going to look out for his kids the same way. And regardless of what choices he makes in his personal life, that doesn't mean that he won't be, saying, hey, but this is what I should do for my kids. So anyway, it's been a phenomenal conversation with you today. I really enjoyed hearing your story, your perspectives. I can see a grounded, good man that just wants to contribute back to the world. And like, what more are we supposed to do? If this life has blessed you and you live a good life and you've had good experiences, you should want to give back so that hopefully many others can walk in the footsteps. And like the final thing, that people that listen to my podcast, I say this all the time, like the greatest gift that you have to give is that of your own self-transformation. So like if you can just try to go out and care about others and care about the future and care about your impact on the world and realize that like you make an influence on every setting you partake in. You matter. You are valuable. Your contribution to the world is more than what you believe it is. So when you show up at 10% of the person you are, that's what the world has to deal with and respond to. And the damage that's caused by you not being the healed version of yourself is you can't actually know how impactful it is until you just dedicate to, I'm going to try to do the best I can for the world around me, my community, other people, and myself. And if we can get our community to stay on that mission, I don't care what anyone says, we've got a sanctuary on the map. And it's, if you haven't visited Livingston County, you are missing out because we have a lot of beauty here. So
Awesome. I love that language. Thank you so much, James. I've so much appreciated this time.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir.